I mentioned about our mission about building community through the sharing of stories. We wrote that before our very first show, kind of like hypothesizing that that's true, and it was really amazing. Like when you open up a story, it's like saying, you can tell me something now. I've told you, you're free to tell me. And people did feel free. And that was a huge surprise at the beginning. We knew it, but like to see it happen was wildly amazing.
All right, folks, it's time for our favorite podcast, Cut to the Chase. Everyone has a story, but few have the courage to stand on a stage and tell it, unfiltered and raw. Today, we are diving into the world of true theater, where everyday people share real stories that reveal just how extraordinary life can be. My guest, David Levy, founder of truetheater.org, has built a community where truth takes center stage, where laughter, heartbreak, and vulnerability remind us of our shared humanity. We'll talk about how storytelling can heal, connect, and even transform a city. We're talking about Cincinnati. So get ready to step behind the curtain. This is a conversation about truth, courage, and the power of a well-told story. Dave, how are you doing today?
Real good, thanks. What you just stated was not on our website. I appreciate that that description. That's what we strive for.
Yes, and I was struggling with that because I kind of liked your mission, and we'll direct people to your website. So if they were interested in more information and digging deeper into what you all do, they can do that. But hopefully today will illuminate what it is. So let's cut to the chase. What is truetheater.org? Where?
My friend Jeff and I, many years ago, fell in love with this organization some of your listeners may be familiar with called the Moth. I don't know if it's true, but I've always credited them with popularizing in the modern age this idea of sitting back and listening to people share their true personal stories from the stage, like it was a show. And they did that, and they boomed all over the country and are international now. And my friend Jeff and I really liked that. And we wanted to bring something like that to Cincinnati. And we basically, and I've said this to the people at the Moth too, we just sort of stole their model. I mean, not that we're really competition for them, we're really local, but we kind of do what they do, but how best we can do it here in Cincinnati. And it's basically what we're doing is we assign a theme to every evening of stories that we produce, and then we seek people, 5 generally, to share a true personal story based on that theme of the evening. Just one example, just last Thursday, the theme of the evening was tattoos, and we found 5 people to share their stories that had to do with tattoos. In this case, it was all about their tattoos, but in some cases, we had stories pitched to us that we ended up not using for one reason or another, where it was the father of a tattoo artist or some other way that was tattoo related. Didn't necessarily have to be people with tattoos. And what we try to do usually is make sure that the 5 stories we choose are sort of approach the theme from different angles so that there's not like a lot of overlap from one story to the next. Although serendipitously, there usually is something that people recognize that crosses over from one story to another. But that's basically what we try to do. Our mission, since you alluded to it earlier, is to build community through the sharing of personal stories. In every show, we sort of start with an introduction as to who we are, and we segue into our first storyteller by saying we believe that everybody has a story to tell, and the only difference between strangers and friends is the sharing of that story. And tonight we say you're going to make 5 new friends, and that's how we believed that from the beginning, and then we've witnessed it time and time again. Somebody shares a story, and it's just like they've opened a door, and people feel emboldened to come up and share their stories back. And this is a lot more than just where do you live and what do you do for a living kind of thing. This is like, oh, I had a similar, I mean, people get really deep sometimes. So it's a wonderful experience.
So I hate to do this, but where do you live? Where's the theater? Where's the theater?
Well, we produce out of Cincinnati's historic Memorial Hall in downtown Cincinnati, an area of Cincinnati called Over the Rhine.
All right. So I want to go there. I want to see it. I mean, do I have to go to Cincinnati to this theater to see it? Is it live streamed? How do I plug in?
Great question. There's many ways to do it. The experience in person is always, it's palpable, and we always try to add something for those at the show that involves, something to do at intermission. Sometimes a way to meet your neighbor, but I know not everybody's into like, meeting strangers at a thing. But there's sometimes prizes to win. We offer some things. It's in addition to hearing the stories in person, and there's more of an experience to go. But we also do live stream the shows for free. We've been doing that since lockdown when we were sort of forced online. And then we just kind of, out of anticipation that we may be going back before the audience was ready, that we wanted to make it available. And we partnered with Northern Kentucky University as a student-run organization called Norse Media that they absorb the rental cost of the equipment, and we just sort of pay their hourly wages, and makes live streaming very affordable. And then after that, so anybody can watch from anywhere in the world. And then within about a week or two after each show, the recording of that show is then available on our website, or we usually post to Facebook. And if you're on our newsletter, you may get wind of the fact that it's now available too. So you can watch most of our shows from the past few years, basically now if you wanted to go and find it.
All right. And if I want to watch live, I can still plug in through your website.
Yeah, our events page will announce the registration link for one to get a Zoom link, and then you'd watch using that Zoom link the night of the show.
All right. So try to explain to me how I mean, unlike theater that has actors and actresses and there's a production and it goes on for a week, a month, a year, 10 years, this is a one and done type of thing that anybody that wants to participate as a storyteller can basically apply to the particular event. So like walk me through it. You come up with an
Yeah.
idea, or you let people pitch you? How does that go?
We've been since we've started, we've been producing four what we call main stage shows a year, every 3 months. So we call a season four shows. Basically, the end of October, January, April, and July, and then it's the next season. We just started our 16th season. And so what we do is by the last show of the previous season, we're ready to announce the themes of the following season so that people can start to get the juices flowing and think about whether any of the themes sort of trigger a memory, say, oh my gosh, I've got a story, I have to pitch for that. And then there's two ways people can get their story in front of us for consideration. There's always our website. We've got a share your story link, and people can fill in the form, and they can choose from the four themes that we have there. And then there's a fifth option that's just like, you just got to hear this, so we sometimes just get submissions like, if there's ever a place for this story, I want you to know that I have it. And we've done something like that where we knew a story was available, but there wasn't a show this season for it because the themes. And so maybe we'll put a theme specific to that story in the next season, just so we can have a place for that story. But anyway, so the website is one way people can get their stories in front of us, and we reach out to talk to everybody who submits at some point or another while the decision process is going on. But also, starting few years before the pandemic, we started doing this thing, not for every single show, but for as many as that we sort of have the ability and resources to do it, is we have what's called a pitch night, where it's kind of like an open mic event where people can get up and share a shortened version of their story, and anybody else can come and hear this. So it's by itself, it's like an evening of entertainment. And it's free, and we do it for free in the back of a bar, and people really come and enjoy that. And we hope to find some of the stories for the show. I've tried to find the majority, like at least 3 out of the 5 we're looking for from that event. And then, and then either all of them from that event or a couple more outside. And once we have the storytellers, well, to finish the idea of how we do the selection process, once we have all the stories in front of us, that's when we sort of figure out which five are going to work best to complement one another. We try to seek, I was mentioning earlier, approaches to the theme from different angles, maybe different moods of the story. Some of them are funny, some of them are, more moving. And once we and it's important, we always stress this to storytellers too. If they come to pitch night and they just like are awful. That's okay. We're not looking for the winner of pitch night. I want to know what the stories are. The fact that we're doing it in front of people is nice and it's fun and it makes for a fun evening. But really, I'm just interested in those stories. So if someone comes and sort of blows it, but the story approaches the theme from an angle that nobody else has done, and it would be a great compliment to the evening. Well, we work with all our storytellers to help them develop their story for the night of the show. So it's just a fun event, and nobody should ever be stressed about stepping up at pitch night and feeling like they didn't do their best that evening because it doesn't rule them out.
Okay, so the pitch night at a bar is in Cincinnati.
Hmm.
All right, in October was your last live performance, and
Yes.
the theme was tattoos.
Yes.
And your next one is going to be in January.
That's correct. For the sake of completion, Thursday, January 22nd, 2026. Yes.
January 22nd. Good date. That would be my birthday. Don't tell anybody. All right.
It's the best date.
It's the
Yeah.
best date. All right. And the theme for that one, have we lined up
Well, we're
storytellers?
we're using the theme love, but we put the word love in quotes because this is specifically non-romantic love, unconditional love. We're thinking about like something larger than yourself. Think community. Think maybe family. There's all sorts of things, and we've gotten a lot of submissions already for things like the love of a son, the love of a mission, the love of reading, and since we do have a pitch night scheduled for this on Tuesday the 11th at Northside Tavern in Northside, Cincinnati. We are going to ask all those people who are delivering their ideas to us already to come to this in the hopes of having a fun evening and getting the ball rolling on the selection process. We're doing it early because of the holidays. Normally we'd go like 6, 7 weeks before the show, but between Thanksgiving and Christmas, New Year's is we want to make sure people have a chance to an opportunity.
All right. So have you rolled out any themes beyond that? Or are you just
Yeah,
focused?
for this whole season has been announced. So that we did tattoo, we got love. By the way, we're True Theater and we have one word themes. And so the last show was called True Tattoo. This one's called True Love. And then we have coming up in April is True Bird. And we chose bird because why not is basically the reason. We've had themes that really generated stories that we had never anticipated. And we're hoping Bird is going to be one of those where we just can't fathom right now what stories we're going to get. And then we're going to finish up with the first theme that we've ever reprised. And we had the audience last year vote on the fourth theme of this coming season from themes we used in the first 5 years of True Theater. And they chose crime as the one to bring back. So true crime is going to be the last theme of the year. And maybe, yourself as a lawyer, you want to travel up here and share a story.
Maybe I do. What about driving through the mountains and with fraternity brothers and getting talked out of bungee jumping? Is that a possibility? No, I'm kidding.
Sure. True G, true cliff, dwelling. Yeah, true mountain, true
Yeah.
mountain. How about
Yeah,
yeah?
yeah. All right. Okay, that sounds fair. All right. So let's go in the past now. Like, what have been your favorite themes? Can you tell us about any of the storytellers that maybe have gone on and used it as a way to like kind of catapult their storytelling career? Has that happened?
Yeah. Well, one exciting show that we did was True Baseball back in, it might have been 2016. And I myself don't have like a deep knowledge base of baseball, but I live in Cincinnati with the Reds, and I couldn't not do it when somebody on the board suggested it. I was like, we really should tackle that. And as it turns out, we ended up we put six storytellers in the show because I had so many great choices to choose from, including two two people who among them had three World Series rings. George Foster from the Big
Nice.
Red
Yeah, the
Machine,
Big Red
Cincinnati
Machine,
Reds,
of
told a
course.
story. And then John Warden, who was a relief pitcher for the Detroit Tigers for one season, and they won the World Series in that season, but he didn't play in the series. He's a very funny guy, and told a really wonderful story. But also just the sort of the normals in the show, the non-World Series players, told really wonderful stories too, men and women alike. So that was a lot of fun. The We did a show where the theme was blue one year. We just like said, let's use the word blue, and we just got a wildly, this is why I mentioned Bird earlier, just we just didn't know what to expect. And we got a guy who told a story about what it's like to be out in public with after he dyed his hair blue. A woman who when she first saw her husband, not at the time, but would be husband in his Marine blues, how she fell in love with him, and that he was a true blue man. Besides, and a man who allowed his house to be used for the filming of a movie that happened to be called Blue. And, just like these really interesting things came out of that. So that, is unexpected and fun. Our very first theme was fear. It happened to be close to Halloween, and we decided to do that. And as it turns out, we could only, because we were brand new and we didn't really know how to go searching for people. We only had four of the five that we wanted. And one day, Jeff and I, as we're sitting around kind of talking about other things to do with the show, I told him a story. It was about taking my son to the amusement park. And the story that I ended up telling him, I mean, I was just telling him because it's something that happened to me, not because I was thinking of it as a story for the show, but he turned to me and was like, that's a fear story. And I was just like, yeah, it really is. And so I worked it up, and he coached me the way we coach our other storytellers. And I ended up putting it on the stage, and it was not only was it a lot of fun, but that story kind of became like a signature story. I used it in a speech contest in Toastmasters and did very well with it. It took me in the contest all the way to Malaysia for the semifinals. And then eventually I managed to get that story in front of the people at the Moth, that organization that I fell in love with, who we mimic. And when they were traveling to Cincinnati, and they put me in their show after coaching me further in that same story. And that story can now be heard on their podcast and their website. And so, like, that was in 2010. I told the story for the first time. And I think in 2014, I went to Malaysia with it. And it was maybe 2017. I recorded it at the Moth. And then maybe a few years later, they put it on their podcast. And it's just like, this incredible thing that has just kind of continued to steamroll out. But I'm not the only one we had one woman who ended up turning her story into a 1 hour sort of solo performance show, mostly local. I don't think you would have heard of her. And just a lot of other people who never thought of themselves as a storyteller.
Yeah.
In rehearsal with one guy one time is a retired Cincinnati public school teacher who had been pulled over for a broken tail light. And when he went in front of the judge said, I'm going to let you go, but there's all these court costs, And he said, nah. And they said, well, I mean, I'm going to have to put you in jail for the weekend if you don't pay. He said, um, that's fine. I've never been to jail. I'll go to jail for the weekend. And when he called his daughter the Monday after and said, I need you to pick me up at the jail, she was like flabbergasted. She had no idea that this had happened. Somebody, they put a puff piece in the paper, and my Jeff saw it and was like, we should get in touch with this guy. And so he agreed to tell it, but like in the middle of rehearsals, he'd be doing his story, he'd be telling it to me, we'd be practicing, and then he'd just sort of interrupt himself and say, people really want to hear this? But I got to tell you, when he was at the show, he could tell people really wanted to hear it. He just leaned into it and just owned that audience. It was so gratifying to see that kind of, this is a guy who never imagined telling a story on stage, and it was just so good at it. I'll never forget him. He was great.
Yeah. All right. So 16 years, it sounds like you're succeeding. It doesn't sound like you're not getting storytellers, you're not getting themes and all that. And you mentioned the Moth. So the Moth was after Katrina, people in Louisiana telling stories, and and then the moths were attracted to the light in the screen door or whatever, right? Is that the genesis of the moth?
I mean, it sounds like you may have heard of the Genesis of the Moth 5 years ago, and you're just trying to
Yeah,
remember what it was that was said to you.
yeah, that's true. Yes.
I'm pretty sure that George Dawes Green, who is the founder of the Moth, I think it's one of the Carolinas, or maybe it was Georgia. He grew up kind of sitting on the porch of like a friend of the family's house, and it was a screened-in porch, and people were always telling stories, and the moths were kind of coming in through the holes in the screen, and they talked about how like they were used the word moth in terms of that sort of gathering. I can't remember exactly how, but
Yeah.
that word stuck with him when he went to New York City and realized that you can't have a conversation that, and speak to another person and ever get out more than 30 seconds before somebody else is chiming in. And he kind of created The Moth originally as like a living room series just to gather friends and tell stories. But like the second time he did it, the apartment was full of people and they were out into the hall. And then he moved it to a bar and then there was too many people there. And so it just kind of kept growing and growing. And yeah, so the genesis of The Moth was, yeah, something like that. It didn't necessarily have to do with, there may be a Katrina tie-in, but
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
I
I
don't
mean,
specifically remember that.
that's what that, yeah. All right. Thanks for the clarification. All right. So, true theater and all right. So, what is the genre for the Moth and true theater? Is it theater? Is it storytelling? Is like,
It's storytelling. It's storytelling. We maybe shouldn't have put the word theater in the title of our thing. It's storytelling through and through. You will occasionally at any sort of live storytelling event, there will be people who perform more than they tell. What we strive for with us, what we tell our storytellers, what we tell our audiences is that the stories that they will hear are prepared, but not scripted. And they're told from memory, but not memorized. And I always tell our storytellers, I don't need you to, I'm not going to expect you, I'm not going to be judging you or grading you on your word for word, repetition, whether you said the this time and last time and or all that stuff. I do recommend people they know their opening sentence or two. You want to start off on the right foot. I also recommend that they memorize their last few sentences because when you're not sure of your ending, people tend to like circle the ending and kind of come around and start repeating themselves, trying to find just the right words and like, oh, I almost got it, so I'm going to start saying things, so there are some things you want to sort of commit to memory, but it's not, I always say you're having a conversation with the audience. It just so happens it's your turn to talk right now. And that's the kind of general conversational tone I'm trying to get the storytellers to strike when they speak. Some people do it better than others. Other people do truthfully feel more comfortable scripting their story and memorizing it word for word. That's just because their nerves are getting the better of them. I've done that myself, and I don't think it's a great idea. If you sort of like forget a line, you throw yourself off. But if you just kind of know your story, you can work yourself out of any hole that you might accidentally fall into because you switch the order of the information or you forgot to mention something in the first minute that's crucial now, and you just sort of like figure out a way to say, oh, and something you should know right now is this thing I forgot to tell you in the first minute, and just sort of keep rolling, because you're familiar with the story. You haven't memorized a script.
yeah,
So that's what we try to shoot for.
yeah,
So yeah, it's not supposed to be performance. It's not supposed to be acting. These are these people's stories.
and no teleprompter, obviously.
Yeah. I mean, in the end, we've had a handful of people over the years who've been like, I just can't get there. And they use notes or something. And we really work hard to avoid that, but
All right, so
it's
I'm going to give you a very general question here. I was going to narrow it down to storytelling, but what have you learned from this? You got storytelling, you got community building, you have, I'm a 501(c)(3) theater
Mhm.
or storytelling company. Like, give me a couple of things that you have been like, wow, I really cannot believe that I learned this, or that this is going on, or this is how people are.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned about our mission about building community through the sharing of stories. We wrote that before our very first show, kind of like hypothesizing that that's true, And then for our very first show, like the night before, we gathered the storytellers together for the first time to celebrate with them over dinner. This was our first show. And Jeff and I decided, like, should we make them tell their stories at the dinner? We'll call it like a rehearsal. And so we did do that. And we just sort of like watched unfold what has now been happening for 16 years. They started the dinner by talking about where do you live in Cincinnati? What do you do? And all this sort of stuff. And then they'd share their stories, and it was suddenly, oh my gosh, my aunt also suffered from, and oh, that really brought me back to my child. And I just the conversation went from, here to just like down in here, and uh, shallow to deep is what I was trying to get at, and and it was really amazing. And it really does sort of like when you open up a story, it's like saying, you can tell me something now. I've told you, you're free to tell me. And people did feel free. And they just, that was a huge surprise at the beginning. We knew it, but like to see it happen was wildly amazing. Um, uh, the fact that people, I was always, I've been worried often about I've been a little bit of a perfectionist sometimes, The audience doesn't give a shit. They're there. They want the stories to be good. They want to enjoy them. They're on the side of the storyteller, like so the person doesn't have to be perfect. In fact, I don't want them to be, like intentionally not perfect, but I think the more sort of human and imperfect, because we all are, that people see on stage, the more they actually recognize themselves in them. And the things that sometimes I worry about being just right, that they don't matter at all.
Yeah.
People eat it up and they really appreciate what people are sharing. This has also taught me something about public speaking in general too. I used to be a very nervous public speaker, but people don't they go to the Indy 500 to see a car wreck. They don't go to
Is that what they're
a
doing over there?
storytelling
I thought
show.
they wanted hot dogs. No, okay.
Yeah, maybe that too. But they there's so much support that comes out of the audience that I just wasn't. I don't know. Like I should say that I wasn't expecting it, but I just love it more than I guess I anticipated I would.
Yeah.
I'm really appreciative of it all the time.
Okay. All right. So you got the Moth, you got truetheater.org. Are there other companies out there in other
There are
regions?
several. In fact, just a year or two ago, a woman came to tell a story at our stage. Like she was from up in Dayton or Columbus or something, and the theme was comics, like newspaper comic, the comic books, whatever. And she told a story about her dog, which was basically inspired by Marmaduke. She got a Marmaduke dog, and she told this story, and then by the time we were done working together and her telling her story, she told me that she'd been to other storytelling shows. There's a story slam up in Dayton. There's another sort of curated story show called Lore in Dayton. There's another one called the Story Club up in Cleveland, and then there's another place out in Pittsburgh. And she's bounced around all these places, and she's retired too. And she had this idea of all of us kind of coming together and sharing ideas and resources that maybe could boost each other up. And from this, we've created this thing called Story Swap recently, where we're starting a podcast. We've got 2 episodes in the can. We got many more to record before we start releasing them. And we produced a show where the people representing all these different groups from the Midwest went out to Pittsburgh to tell like a show and tell kind of story where each person, had something and told a story about. And I drove all the way out to Pittsburgh to tell a 5-minute story on stage, but it was a ton of fun. And we're going to be doing another one in Dayton in January and then another one here in May. Yeah, there are storytelling opportunities all around the Midwest. I'm certain all around the country. The Moth is a lot of fun. They do curated shows where you sort of have to be invited to tell your story there. I mean, you can audition or whatever, but they also have these story slams, like our open mic events that I described, where people just go and tell a story based on the theme of the evening. And they do a thing where they audience members or judge the stories and somebody's a winner and they may come back and compete and sounds like fun. But yeah, there's all sorts of storytelling opportunities all over the place. And that's just if you're into true personal stories. Once you get into folk tales and children's, and like these other things, the opportunities continue to skyrocket.
Yeah, nice. All right. So if somebody's out there right now and they're like, hey, listen, this is a great idea. I'd like to do the same thing. I'd like to create the same storytelling kind of event in my little town or my big town or whatever. Can they reach out to you for some tips and like how to?
Absolutely. I have sat down to lunch with people who wanted to start something here in Cincinnati. I'm not worried, not because we're so great that will crush any competition. I'm just not, I think it only serves the community to have more of this. And we only do but so much a year. So I've sat down to have lunch with people, but anybody absolutely can reach out to me. You keep mentioning truetheater.org. We spell theater the fancy way, ending in RE, so truetheatre.org. And my email address is dave@truetheater.org. And anybody's free to write me there. If they can't remember Dave, they can write info or stories@truetheater.org. They all go to my inbox. So all of that's good.
Nice. I don't even need to look at my script here because you're answering all my questions beforehand. But I do want to throw one thing in, one little personal note. I love storytelling. I always did. And when I was a little kid, I went to sleepaway camp. I was 8 years old, and I don't know what happened to me or whatever, but the lights would go out. Everybody was just about to go to sleep. And every single night, I would just ad lib a ghost story. And I would start,
Well,
I don't even know what, I mean, it's just kind of like I'm looking back, I'm like, what was going on? And I would start the story every single night. I had no idea what I was going to do. It wasn't rehearsed. I didn't have a theme or like, this happened to me. So it just happened. And I would start every story the same way. This is a true story.
nice.
I loved it.
I love it.
Listen,
It's
I
great.
love you too. Dave and
Oh,
I
thanks,
are the
Greg.
fraternity brothers. We just went to a football game in Bourbon Country and had too much to drink and then everything just disintegrated. But all right, did I miss anything, David? This is your opportunity. You want to talk about anything else about this? We got your schedule, we got your info, the right spelling.
Yeah. No, I mean, I just whether it's at True Theater or which, by the way, at True Theater is us on Instagram and Facebook. Whether it's there or someplace else, I would encourage anybody to get in front of people and share a story on stage. There's something about it that is so empowering. And one of the things, here's you asked about things that surprise me over and over again, people that come to me to work on their stories, they may have like, here's the thing that happened. And so we start talking about the thing that happened as by way of developing their story. And then I say, well, was there anything from your childhood that would have like, that you could have been like a predictor that this was going to happen to you one day? Like, do you remember, did you always get in trouble or did you always like to, run away from or whatever it is, and people would be like, now that I think about it, and they start putting pieces together and it's like they say the unexamined life is not worth living. Well, I think that a lot of people, don't examine their lives, but stopping to sort of like figure out how you would tell a story if you were given 10 to 12 minutes to do so in front of an audience and what would go into that story sort of like forces you to examine your life. And time after time again, people just tell me they just love that experience. Even if they only come to pitch night and they don't get chosen for the show, even just the work that they did to prepare for that, they feel like is, enlightening and eye-opening and rewarding for them. And that every time I hear it, I'm pleased, and it continues to sort of surprise me, but not really surprise me because I keep hearing it. But I just love that. So examine your life, tell a story, and get out there. People want to hear it.
Yeah. All right. Amazing episode. Listen, folks, I want you to share this episode because there's so many good things about this. It's fun, it's storytelling, it's digging deep into who you are, it's building community, all that. It's not just, listen, I would love for you to log in to this show in Cincinnati, January 22nd, my birthday. You will be like, wow, happy birthday, Greg. Okay. No, you don't need to do that. But that's it. I want you to subscribe, rate, review this show. I want you to do the same thing with this guy's show. All right. David, thank you for coming on. We had a great time in Bourbon Country. My secret is safe with you. Your secret is safe with me. The moral of
Gotcha.
the story is if you're driving in the mountains and you see people jumping off a bungee, don't do it. It looks fun, but don't do it. All right. All right, David. Take care of yourself and we'll be in touch. All right.
You too, Greg. Good catching up. Thanks.
That's all for this episode of Cut to the Chase. But before you go, will you open up your podcast app and give us a 5-star review? You can also leave a comment about what you liked most or other topics you'd like us to cover. And please be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any upcoming shows. Thanks, everybody. Be safe out there.